Thank you. I want to follow up on one thing that Chief Justice Quinn had mentioned as far as reaching out to experienced lawyers and asking questions. That was something that Buck Files had talked to me about before in getting prepared on his presentation. He said it had been 10 years since a young lawyer, or really a court-appointed lawyer, has called him asking for advice. So I think what the Chief Justice was saying and what Buck Files had shared with me, reach out, and you've got great resources in your communities. You're getting an opportunity to meet great people at this program, so take advantage of those resources. Our next presenter, Mr. Tim Murray, is the Executive Director of the Pretrial Institute in Washington, D.C., and he has worked as a criminal justice practitioner at the local and state and federal levels. He was the principal architect and administrator of the nation's first drug court. As a result of that work, he went on and served the U.S. Department of Justice as the first director of the Drug Court Program Office. He is a lifetime member of the National Association of Pretrial Services. He's got an incredible vitae, but that is not the reason he was invited to talk on pretrial matters. I had an opportunity to hear Mr. Murray earlier this year, or possibly it was last year, and one thing that he does is he brings a tremendous amount of passion to everything that he touches, and this is a tough time slot, 2:15 in the afternoon after a big lunch, so no pressure, but let's please welcome Mr. Tim Murray.
Good afternoon, everybody. My organization is located in Washington, D.C. I live in Maryland. I was getting ready to fly out to Austin yesterday for this gig. And as I was getting ready at home, I said to my wife, I said, honey, you know, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think that I would be invited to Austin, Texas, to talk to the group that is convening for the 10th anniversary of indigent defense in the state? And without blinking an eye, my bride looked at me and said, Sugar, my wildest dreams have nothing to do with you, the state of Texas, or indigent defense. So a little reality might be okay here, right? I don't know why Jim invited me to this thing. I spoke here 6 months ago or so, and Jim came up and said, oh, we'd love to have you back in whatever it is now. And I said, did you hear what I said? I don't think you really want me to come back. And he said, no, I want you to. And I'm stumped as to why I've been invited to talk with y'all for a bit. I haven't written a book. I'm not selling you anything. I don't have a county to point to that is doing great. I didn't write standards. I don't have 45 minutes worth of stuff to tell you. And because I don't have 45 minutes worth of stuff to tell you, obviously, I'm not even a lawyer. Is this on? Can they hear me? You think so? Okay. So what the heck am I doing here? So I watched the tape that you showed of Rusty Ladd at the beginning of this thing. And I realized that Rusty was talking to me. Because at one point in the tape, and it jumped out at me, he said, it's simple justice. And it hit me like a baseball bat. That's why you guys are here. About trying to reach that bar of providing simple justice. Justice my fifth grader could understand. Justice recognized by a 19-year-old African-American inner city kid. Justice as felt by the average citizen who watches a 30-second summary of it on TV. If it's just, shouldn't it be recognizable to all those folks? And maybe the reason that we as a society have so much trouble recognizing justice is because we see such a stinking slight amount of it in this country. You know, I have a lot of respect for Tony Flabello. I've admired his work since I was a small child. And I met Tony when I worked at the Justice Department, and there was a fact that was true back then that remains true this afternoon. Across the United States of America this afternoon, in the great state of Texas this afternoon, there is one reason. That is the singular reason the crushing majority of individuals are being held in cages in jails across this state and across this country. One reason, ladies and gentlemen. It is not that they've been convicted of a crime or even the certainty of their conviction. It is not the deficiency in their character, their inability to present themselves as God-fearing, tax-paying citizens. It isn't their race, their economic status, their neighborhood, their zip code. The one stinking reason they're in a cage is because they're unable to put the amount of cash that the court has set on the record will be required to buy their freedom. As though that cash has some kind of magical ability to turn the accused into someone who poses a manageable amount of risk. As though that cash has some kind of fairy dust attached to it that will compel the accused to come to court when and where we want him or her to come. As though that cash does one thing other than separate those who've got it from those that don't. Because that's all cash does. That's all cash does. That isn't my opinion. That has been empirically demonstrated over and over and over again, yet we clutch to our monetary-based pretrial release system in this country as if, it's the best we can do. Really? Really? That's the best we can do? Do we think for a minute that our clients don't recognize the hypocrisy of watching people go home while they stay? Do you think for a minute our clients don't understand who those individuals are that are walking home and why they get to go home and why our clients stay in jail? 2/3. County commissioners here, it's costing $9 billion annually to keep presumed innocent pretrial defendants locked up. And what are we going to do when they plead guilty? Because we know 90-some percent plus of them will in fact plead guilty. What are we going to do with them? Alex, what are we going to do with them? We're going to send them home. Less than 7% of those who get booked into jail wind up in prison. 93% of those who get booked go home without ever seeing a state prison. Yet, while I'm presumed innocent, I am so stinking scary, so stinking unstable. The only thing you can do with me is to lock me in a cage. The minute you give me a second to stand there and raise my hand and say, yep, that was me, I did it, because that's what I do in 92.8% of the time, then you go, oh, you're not as bad as we thought. We weren't really sure who you were, Tim, because you were accused and presumed innocent, but now that you said you've done it, fine, you can go home. Really? Really? Bail reform in this country started almost 50 years ago as a result of a project in New York City called the Manhattan Bail Project. There was a philanthropist in New York. His wife had died. He wanted to do something in her memory. And he sent out scores of college students around the city to find social dilemma. And one of them came back and said, man, you're not going to believe what I found. Turns out there's more people in jail in this city because they can't pay $100 than for any other reason. Pardon me? Yeah, $100. That was the most common unmet bail in New York City in 1962, $100. That's all it took. If they could have kept him locked up for 95, they would have, right? It isn't naming an amount I can make, is it, ladies and gentlemen? It's naming the amount that's going to keep me in. It's naming the amount that's going to make me so stinking compliant that when you do give me a chance, that when Scott says, what do I do? When they say it's a deal 1 day only, I am so freaking compliant that I go, get out of my way, man. I'm pleading. Why we're not talking about setting bail for me that I can make if the disposition is going to result in credit for time served, I'm not sure. I'm not sure to any of you. That's on your shoulders. If I am such a minor risk, you're offering me a plea like that, offer it to me after I can get out and think for a little bit. Offer it to me when I'm not sleeping on the floor. Offer it to me when my freedom has not been taken away by a cage. 50 years ago, Manhattan Bail Project. And so the origin of my line of work started in New York City by these people. And you know what they did? They paid people's bail. That's how all this nonsense started. I have brothers and sisters working in pretrial here, and I congratulate them for the great work that they do. But we owe our legacy to those people in New York who paid the $100. And then they would watch court, and the defendants would come back. And they'd go, what the hell? Why are they coming back? They don't know us. They haven't seen the $100. They'll never even meet us. They have no financial incentive. Why are they coming to court? And it turns out the answer was simple, because somebody told them to come back to court. And the overwhelming majority of them actually did. And so bail reform quickly moved away from paying bail to proffering to the court that some defendants were of a manageable enough risk that they could be released without paying money. And that was the birth of bail reform. A reform that took off internationally, ladies and gentlemen, to the point where there's only 2 countries remaining in the world that still use commercial surety for profit as the predominant mechanism for pretrial release. And in case you're interested, those 2 countries are the Philippines and the United States of America. Aren't we proud? 50 years ago, Bobby Kennedy convened as Attorney General the first national symposium on bail reform. By shamelessly invoking the image and memory of Bobby Kennedy, we were able to coerce the Department of Justice to reconvening a national symposium on bail reform earlier this summer. I have about 90 seconds of video from the symposium I'd like to show you now. So I got some of my friends to come over and make a video. It was very cool. We had the American Bar Association there, the American Jail Association, the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Association of Counties, National Conference of Chief Justices, the ACLU, U.S. Department of Justice, as you guys saw, and many, many others. And implicit among the remarks of the speakers was that bail serves a purpose in our legal system. That purpose is to reasonably assure appearance, and in most states, to provide for the reasonable protection of the public against crimes that might be committed while on release, should a defendant be released pending adjudication. Purpose of bail is not to punish. It's not to coerce pleas. It's not to help us manage our dockets. It's to get my fanny back to court and keep me out of trouble in the meantime. Yet as you go from system to system, including this state, you see how the use of bail has been perverted to answer a number of issues that it has no reasonable expectation of ever reaching or ever accomplishing. I was interviewing a prosecutor's office in a large West Coast urban jurisdiction, Los Angeles, that I won't mention. And I said, you guys, what's wrong with bail in this county? And they said, geez, Murray, you're not going to believe what happens here. I said, tell me, because I've seen your jail and I've seen who's in there, so I think I have an idea of what's happening in this county. He goes, lower court judges will set a bail, and the defendant will make it, and he'll come back in, and then we have to fight tooth and nail to get the bail raised. I'm sorry, to get the bail raised? Right. Okay, so the defendant got released. The defendant appeared when he was supposed to, or she was supposed to. The defendant is not accused of subsequent criminal activity, yet you raised the bail. Right. Why would you want the bail higher? The guy's out. Right. That's bail in America. It is. I wish I could tell you I've never talked to a public defender who didn't say, you know, the action's at disposition. I really don't have the time to be there or to do much at the front end of the case. So let's talk a little bit about what my pretrial detention status has in the way of impact on the outcome of my case. Because one of the few things they know about my line of work is this. If Flabello and I are the same guy, who have the same criminal history, who are charged with the same offense, and I stay in and he gets out, the likelihood of me receiving a sentence, same offense, same criminal history, the likelihood of me receiving a sentence that requires incarceration is 6 times greater than the guy who's out. 6 times greater. And you can tease out the cases that get credit for time served. And it is 6 times greater. It was proven in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. It remains true today. As we talk about reentry, as we talk about realignment, as we talk about all of the wonderfully innovative and promising reforms, unless and until we move back to the beginning of the criminal case process and adopt a public health model built on the premise that the earlier we intervene, the more likely we're going to be successful, and the more cost-effective it's going to be. I wish I could tell you I've never had a public defender tell me, you know, my clients are better off in jail pending trial. But I have. I wish I could tell you I've only heard that once. But I've heard it more than once. I've had public defenders tell me, my clients are better off in jail pending trial. I know they won't get in trouble, Tim. I know where they'll be when I need them. Really? Really? I don't mean to act out of school, but have you ever been in jail? I'm hard-pressed to understand when being in one of those places makes me better off. I'm hard-pressed to understand that when I either use my money, my mom's money, or the public's money to pay for a lawyer, that the best advice they can give me is, you're better off staying in jail, while I am presumed innocent. So what do we do about it? Well, we have pretrial services programs. Oh, thank God. Save the day. Unless you're one of those pretrial service programs that has been so beaten up over the years, it really doesn't remember what it's doing or how to do it. who simply validate all of the dysfunction and disrepair associated with local criminal justice practice. There are some really good pretrial programs in this country, and some of them are in Texas. We heard about Bell County today. Some of them are here. You have some god-awful programs in Texas, too. You have some programs in Texas where you can legitimately say to me, Tim, I saw him recommend one client one day and say he was the greatest risk ever. Then the next day, client looks just like that client, and they said, oh, no, Judge, don't release that guy. They make no sense to me, and they make no sense to you because they are nonsensical, because they don't base their work on empirically proven outcomes. They don't help people make informed decisions. They jump ahead and hope to make a recommendation that will mirror the decision the court was going to make without them, in which case I always raise my hand and say, what the hell are you doing there? I don't need you. If you got a judge that locks up every gun case and you go to court and you say, lock up every gun case, what the hell? Those programs should be there to withstand your scrutiny, the prosecutor's scrutiny, the public's scrutiny, and as well as inform the court's decision. Unless the program's work can do those things, the program is flawed. That then turns around an obligation on your part. You cannot sit there as public defenders, appointed or otherwise, and say, I don't understand what the heck those people do. Then damn it, find out. You're a part of the constituency I'm supposed to be serving when I run one of those programs. You're one of my consumers. Become demanding consumers. I become stronger. I become more effective. I become more useful every time you come to me with a question, every time you come to me with a challenge. Demand I do my work in the light and the air. Demand to see outcomes. Ask, why are you recommending this guy and not that guy? And be satisfied with my answer or challenge me. And don't forget the influence of those who gain monetarily from the current system and business as usual. There are programs in this state that have state-of-the-art, validated risk assessment schemes that will tell the court, this defendant has characteristics that put him into a very low likelihood of reoffense and a very low likelihood of failure to appear in court. And the court will take that risk assessment and they will put every condition of supervision that they can on that defendant, and then they'll set a $5,000 bond on top of it. Why? Why? Because they can. That's why God made them judges. Judges are notorious for loading defendants up with every single thing within reach, so as to err on the side of being conservative. That's not irresponsible. It's irresponsible on our part not to educate the court as to the detrimental effects of those kinds of decisions, because those decisions come with a cost. It's up to us to make sure judges understand having me report in once a week and maintain the curfew and do whatever else the pre-trial program recommended based upon empirically measured risk is not enhanced by a $5,000 bond. The imposition of that bond simply keeps those of me who can't raise it in jail. It does not diminish my risk. It does not increase my likelihood of court appearance. It simply locks up those of me who don't have it. We all work in buildings that are rife with folksy wisdom. I don't know why that is, but it's true. If he ran away from the police officer, that's indicia of fugitivity. no, turns out it's not. Turns out we've actually measured that in this state a couple of times. And people charged with those kinds of things have no greater likelihood of failure to appear when all the other characteristics are the same. Some people will steal from a stranger, but they won't steal from their grandma. Turns out they'll steal from their grandma just as soon as they'll steal from you. They're going to steal. They're going to steal. And the fact that grandma put up her house is really bad news for grandma, more than it is a motivator for individuals to come back. Guys, I got 1 million of them. So do you. The day of the first appearance court comedy show really should be a fond memory we put behind us. Stories that we tell at the holiday party. Because all of that needs to be replaced by the science of risk prediction. All of that needs to be replaced by the accountable government practice of showing outcomes and adjusting to those outcomes. So we can, as Rusty admonished us to this morning, provide simple justice. Thank you for your time.